Clips. Okay everybody, a nice big warm welcome from a very rain-sodden Glasgow. Kevin Kipp bringing you the weekly instalment of GUNN, Glasgow Underground News Network. Most possibly the most unscripted, lack of format show there is on the net, and let me tell you, with just 48 seconds to go before we took to the air, I can assure you it wasn't quite looking as if we would make it. Skype issues, technical issues. I'd love to say it was the CIA or GCHQ, the way that some of these podcasters love to, just for like dramatic effect. But no, seriously, it's just two normal guys trying to figure out how to get Skype wired into a radio network.
With 5 minutes to go, but less than 5 minutes to go even.
Kip, how are you, man? How are you doing this week, mate?
Aye, really good, man. Even, it doesn't matter what the news say, life goes on no matter if there is, even if there is some bad weather out there, Kev. I don't know about you, did you still manage to breathe and go about your daily business? Or
it certainly didn't affect my day. I didn't notice anything. I mean, yep, it was windy, but it is winter, Kip. I will say on the flip side of that, though, my poor mum, my stepdad, and my brother, they're obviously up in the north of Scotland, and just next to them, Kip, they recorded 142 mile an hour winds, and they were without power. I believe it was somewhere in the region of 10 hours. And I was just kind of hinting to my ma, and I was reminding her of all the times she kind of laughed at me when I used to say, prepare, prepare, prepare. I mean, obviously when I used to talk about preparation to my ma, I was giving her a doomsday scenario. But just something as simple as a power cut, and there you go, bang. Nobody's laughing then when you've got candles, some fresh water, some means to boil it.
Kev, have we not laughed at each other in the sense that all the stuff that we talk about, we haven't got a candle between us?
Shh, you're not meant to say that, Kip.
Oh, but I've got a torch.
That's by the by. We won't mention that. So obviously this week, Kip, it'd be mental of us not to mention right at the start of the show. Although I don't want to go on about it ad nauseum like the news cycles. Nelson Mandela passed away this week. Obviously, unless you've been on the moon or Mars, you probably missed that. But, yeah, I put out a video yesterday, Kip, I don't know if you've seen it, and I've called it kind of the Google washing of Nelson Mandela.
Aye.
What I'm trying to say, people, is that although I can respect the man for the good stuff he did do, I'm sure Nelson Mandela himself would have been the first, and he was the first on many occasions to highlight that he was no angel, and he, like everyone else, was a sinner, and he had some bad past. But when you're watching this BBC, Sky News, in the UK in particular, it's as if they're just wanting to give you that one sanitised version of Nelson Mandela, the world leader, the guy who brought an end to apartheid in South Africa. They don't tend to mention how he brought that about, though, Kip. Or am I wrong to speak ill of somebody who really did, in his latter days, do so much good for the world? Arguably.
Well, as fate has it, Kev, what you were sort of talking about there fits in nicely with what I'm going to talk about later, in the sense, like, when I heard that Nelson Mandela was dead, of course, I done the obvious thing and started researching George Square in Glasgow. So I want to talk about George Square and some of the statues and symbolism in and around George Square, the city chambers. It's right on our doorstep, mate. It's a fascinating area of the world, time of the world. I mean, Glasgow was the most important trading city in the Western world during the French and American revolutions. and with the statues is up, the people who are involved, it ties into everything. I mean, maybe it's just me that. Maybe it's me that it's doing good seeing the links or pointing out the links, or maybe I'm seeing links that aren't there, but for me they're all tied in. And with as far as Nelson Mandela goes, Kev, I think it's an important point. No matter what good deeds are presented to you on the mainstream media that people have done, or even bad deeds that people have done, there's always a flip side, and I think it's important for people to look at it at both angles. Right now, I think it was yourself, Kev, because I know diddly squat about Nelson Mandela. I'll be honest, I know nothing about him. He's never came across my path, and but I think it was you that touched on David Cameron might have been part early in his early Tory days of a campaign to get him hanged or something.
Well, it was a campaign against the ANC, and
right.
Basically there was a poster campaign, and it was advocating for the hanging of Nelson Mandela for the crimes which he committed. And we shouldn't forget that he actually had pleaded guilty to 165 crimes of violence, and basically of violence that is terrorism. Here's just a couple, Kip, right? He ordered the bombings of a shopping centre in Durban, however, and then he ordered a movie theatre to be bombed in Pretoria. However, the terrorist blew himself up, no killings that time. There was a lot of individual terrorist events that took place, okay? Now, like I say, he himself, it was 156 charges he actually pleaded guilty to in the end, Kip. And like I said at the start, I've got it wrote down here, he was actually quoted as saying quite a few times that he is just as flawed as the rest of us and shouldn't be put on a pedestal. So I think if Nelson Mandela, rest in peace, could be listening to this, I don't think he would look bad on us for... I mean, we're not like belittling the guy or anything, Kip, or I'm not wanting to take away from him, but I'm just pointing out the full story.
Well, seeing hindsight and the very little information I know in and around what's happened in that area and in and around the time Mandela was coming to power, you had a lot of nationalists in South Africa, and nationalists in the sense that they were white and they believed in the sense that they were South African and they warranted a state kind of along the same lines.
Is that like your Dutch Africans, Kip?
Well, like there was millions of Europeans in there.
Aye, but I mean that's the ones you hear about most, really, isn't it? The Dutch and the English ones, really, the main ones. I
know the Brits, obviously, in South Africa and around there, and you only need to go and look at the old and colonial maps, and you'll see the in and around. I think it was the Kingdom of South Africa, which was at South Africa and all those now independent, so-called independent countries around it, and. There was so in hindsight, Nelson Mandela didn't offer up this utopia that he was used for. So you could say he was an ultimate Jedi mind trick, kind of like the French Revolution, the American Revolution, the abolishment of slavery. It sounds great on the tin, but then you open it up and you don't get what's in the tin. You get dog food in the tin. You know what I mean? Like they offer you up as this revolution, we're going to have something great, and this even leads on to what I'm going to talk about later. And what you get at the end of the day isn't the revolution or the milk and honey you were promised. It's ultimately a worse place. And I would argue, especially over the time frame I'm going to talk about later, especially the French Revolution, the American Revolution, it's sort of replacing God as the ultimate authority with the state or with the corporation.
Definitely, Kip.
And I've got even information here later on linking this all to the Roman Admiralty law.
Well, Kip, look at when he came in. Just one example, okay? 95, the apartheid government, they were talking about cutting the defence budget. Now, they were on about losing, I believe it was somewhere in the region of... It was thousands of troops anyway getting cut, Kip, right? Now, one of the first things Nelson Mandela done when he came into power, you'd think he would want to wipe out the imbalances of apartheid that had been created and things like that. Well, no, he did not. He went on a massive spending spree, Kip. And what he done is that he went on a massive spending spree to the British, and the American military-industrial complex. Now think of South Africa on the map, folks. Are they surrounded by outer enemies who are a threat? Some kind of invasion force coming into South Africa? No, they're not. So can you explain to me why Nelson Mandela how he managed to justify spending, and wait for this, Kip, $3.67 billion on military hardware? Now, the conspiratorial side of me would say possibly that's why he's getting painted in such a bright light and such a shining light by media.
On, I need to stop you, man. Where do you think the South African authorities got the love bullets to hit back that very bad, those demon protesters of the miners?
Oh, the pesky miners.
Aye, when they just started shooting them down like World War One style, just running into machine gun fire, just mowing them down.
See, when you look into characters like this and then you find something it's so easy to find stats like that, and it just so ties in with everything we talk about.
Well, I think it goes on. If you stand back and look at it, it's better to look at see what it says about looking at the whole picture, where history is written by the winners and they'll paint people as they want to paint them rather than the reality of the fact. I mean,
think of the word, Kip.
There's murderers on both sides of wars. There always has been, and ultimately it's who wins and then who can come across more justified. Then there's always the perspective that even those stories have been manipulated and fabricated to...
That ties in brilliantly as well, man, because I took a note on how Amnesty International, they wouldn't even touch the Mandela case at the time because they said that they could not justify giving the name prisoner of conscience to anyone associated with the level of violence that Mandela was. And also at the same time, he never at any time renounced the use of violence for political gain, i.e. getting rid of the apartheid regime. So, and do you know, in that actual story I read as well, they were bringing up the fact that in real wars, you can kind of give a bit of leeway to somebody that was following orders. However, this guy wasn't following no orders. There was no gun pointed at his head.
Well, with my tinfoil hat on and trying to look at the ultimate fallout from Mandela, you could say that he's played into the hands of the multinational corporations. The majority of the European businesses that were situated in there and making a profit out of South Africa's resources remain there, remain making a profit out of South Africa's resources. The only difference is the piper at not even at the top. The corporations are at the top, but Mandela and his cronies get paid along the way, and they're using this black-white thing. I mean,
every country's a franchise now, Kip, innit, for these corporations.
Kev, a gangster is a gangster is a gangster is a gangster. It doesn't mean if he's he's black. We can't.
It's the same as when somebody says, "Well, I chose Obama because he was the lesser of two evils." Well, he's still evil. Evil's evil.
I still think the putting Obama in, which I think is quite accurate, putting Obama in was a Jedi mind trick, similar along the same lines as Margaret Thatcher. Oh, she's a lady. She can't be a war-mongering whore. She's a Lady Thatcher. And I think that's the Jedi mind trick behind Obama as well. It's like, if you don't like... And it's been proven to be used time and time again. If you dislike Obama, you get called a racist, and it's a poor attempt, but it fends off so many weak-minded individuals.
Well, Kip, we're not far off the midpoint of his second term, not too far away, right? On the whole, would you say he's been a success when the globalist puppet masters sit down and talk about how their front man has got on over the past 5 years so far?
Well, I don't know about you, Kev. In this country, you still bump into people who slag him off for a lot of things. Like they can listen to what you're saying when you're slagging him off for the amount of dead, the drones, the kill list. But then we'll go, but he did get Obamacare through. Because they don't see
forget he hunted down Bin Laden himself.
Oh, I know, man. And with the Obamacare thing, they don't see the idea with Obamacare and the idea with the proposal, well, the destruction of the NHS as we know it and the rebirth of it.
Kip's Clip.